AB, let's talk some transfer portal. We'll start with the commitments. Michigan with 3 in the last week. And let's just start with wide receiver and Michigan getting a couple of those, 2 completely different situations. C.J. Charleston at Youngstown State from the FCS put up over 500 receiving yards last year, played 5 seasons at Youngstown State, missed the year in 2022 due to an Achilles injury. But, has had really a solid season last year. It has been a solid player, but he's going, up a couple levels to the Big Ten or one level to the FBS, but really, heading to the Power 4. And then Amorian Walker, who everybody knows, he took a little spring break down at Ole Miss for 3.5 months. Now he's back at Michigan in the fold. We knew Michigan needed to add receivers in the transfer portal. He played defensive back this spring at Ole Miss. He played DB last year at Michigan, but now expected to transition back to wide receiver. AB, we knew they needed wide receivers. They got a couple.
Yeah, and I think they're 2 good additions too, in terms of you took one depth guy and one basically lotto ticket. So there's a little upside with both additions, but the upside would more be towards Amorian Walker, who now goes into year 3 of what the hell is he, despite being a freaky athlete. I look at C.J. Charleston. He's a guy that you're probably looking at as like a backup to Tyler Morris at the Z spot. And then Amorian Walker, he steps in, and I bet, I expect him to compete for time at the X. I think Fred Moore gets some time there. Amorian Walker is going to play for some time there. Peyton O'Leary is a guy that is going to compete for time there. But, when you look at this room now, they spent most of spring ball with 5 scholarship guys in O'Leary, Tyler Morris, Frederick Moore, Samaj Morgan, Kendrick Bell. And Kurt Campbell talked about this a few weeks ago. Like, you are a pulled hamstring, a rolled ankle, or some kind of injury away from all of a sudden being kind of light there. So, they were never going to go out and get Keandre Lambert-Smith. They were never going to go out there and get a number 1 wide receiver. I think they like their top 3. I like their top 3 quite a bit. It sounds like a law firm of Morgan, Morris, and Fred Moore. And then from there, we'll see what happens. But Charleston, to me, I mean, it's, I talked about how it looked likely they'd probably make some sort of Dalen Baldwin-esque type of addition. To me, this fits that bill in terms of a veteran guy playing up a level, rounding out your wide receiver room. And Amorian Walker, I mean, he's interesting, man, because, again, like, he was injured last year in fall camp. They really wanted to give this cornerback thing a try. He's 6'3", 180, 190. I'm not exactly sure what he weighs in at now, but elite movement skills, a guy that, again, I just think he's in a similar pot to Alex Orji in a lot of ways, where he's too good an athlete to not find a role for him somewhere. And, the fact that he can kind of come back to Michigan now after what you described as a spring break, he can come and compete for time at receiver. Again, I don't know what type of role he's been guaranteed. I don't know what his ball skills look like at wide receiver. We really never got a ton of looks at him at receiver when during his freshman year. But again, both additions, you got Charleston, who's a depth guy, and you've got now this taller target with speed, with athleticism, that if it clicks for him, could be a guy that takes the top off of a defense. So a lot of people have asked. I suspect he's not going to play 2 ways. I think this is an opportunity to get reps back at wide receiver. So we'll see what happens. But all of a sudden, you kind of like the depth and what the room has now. It maybe doesn't have a top flight number 1 option in it, but I think they can conjure up some magic from this group of guys that they have.
Yeah, I think the number 1 wide receivers you're talking about, 1 commanded a lot of money in the transfer portal, and 2 probably wanted to go somewhere where there's a solidified starting quarterback who is proven. And, I just don't think Michigan has that at this point. It doesn't mean somebody's not going to play well there this fall at the position, but I think they knew they needed bodies. This is kind of an example of that with C.J. Charleston. And then Amorian Walker is kind of a no-brainer. Like, if he wants to come back, and wants to play wide receiver, like, he had that opportunity. I think it was voluntary, even though the coaching staff encouraged it, the move to corner last year. And we'll see it just didn't seem like that quite worked out from what I've gleaned from one of our reporters down at Ole Miss. He was not pushing in the too deep there at corner, and maybe a move to wide receiver is kind of in his best interest. Has one career catch for 4 yards in 2022 at Michigan before moving over to the defensive side of the ball last year. I do remember that Rutgers game when JJ threw a deep ball to him. It was kind of a nice ball, and he just either wasn't looking or like kind of went in between his hands. I don't think he turned his head quick enough. Like you said it with ball skills. Yeah, go ahead.
That's why I felt bad. You're looking for pictures to put in the story. The only picture of him at wide receiver is a ball going through his hands at Rutgers. So it's like, oh, well, maybe we don't lead with that. But yeah, sorry, continue.
No, I think it's a good point. I think we used that picture a couple years ago, then swapped it out because we're like, all right, we don't want to do it.
It's kind of mean.
Dirty. So you have that, very unproven, but like you said, I mean, the upside's there. It's worth a shot there. And then just to read off a couple stats exactly on CJ Charleston, had the Achilles injury in 2022, 33 catches for 503 yards and 4 touchdowns. Last year at Youngstown State, I will say this does feel similar to Dalen Baldwin in a certain respect because it is FCS. He's coming up to Michigan, but Dalen Baldwin, led his team, led his conference in receiving in the spring 2021 season at Jackson State, who was a good team under Deion Sanders. Like, this guy was third on his team in receiving. He's had the injury history. So I think it's a little, Dalen Baldwin didn't have a huge impact here, but he did add a number in the room. He did add somebody you could rely on, especially early in the year before he kind of got passed up by Andrell Anthony and some other guys. Like, he was a valuable player on that 2021 Michigan team. And, if Charleston can be that, and look, the injury is one thing, but maybe being 2 years removed from it is going to be, allow him to take an even bigger jump. So I think it was worth the take. It'll be interesting to see if they take any more wide receivers, but those are those additions. And then just to quickly mention Dominic Zada, who is the kicker from Arkansas State, who is probably going to be one of the least talked about, most underrated pickups that any team has this season because Michigan needed a kicker. I think we all pretty much knew that. And this kid goes 34 of 40 in 2 seasons at Arkansas State, which, by the way, will play at Michigan in September. So he was scheduled to come to the Big House. Now he's going to play at least 8 games in the Big House, maybe more if Michigan hosts a playoff game. But 71 of 72 on extra points, 14 of 17 from 40-plus yards, including 2 of 3 from 50-plus. With the 56-yarder, he's made a 53-yarder. Like, this kid has a big leg, and he's accurate, and he's kind of everything you hoped Michigan would be able to land out of a kicker in the portal.
Well, you hope that week 3 game doesn't come down to kicks. I'll say that right off the bat.
True.
But again, yeah, it was, when the transfer portal opened on the 16th and you started to see these guys, trickle out and enter. And I was working on something at the time where just looking at guys that entered that would make sense if Michigan pursued them. And he jumped in the portal and he was the first guy, one of the first guys that wound up on that list. So it's interesting that he does wind up coming to Michigan. Yeah, I mean, it's an addition that I think we're both in lockstep they needed. I want to choose my words carefully about how I talk about Adam Samaha, but, in the spring game, missed a 30-yard field goal. He, something just weird about the loft on those kicks, just kind of hang up in the air. You want guys to drive the ball. And Zavada's a guy who has experience doing that. And, it's similar to, he's certainly more probably James Turner than he is Jake Moody. I don't think he's going to go out there and hit a 55-yarder or a 60-yarder or anything like that.
He's made 56.
He did. James Turner made a couple 50-yarders too. Shout out Detroit Lion, James Turner, by the way.
True. 50 is different than 56, though. I will.
Yeah, it is. It is. That is driving the football, and I think that tells you everything you need to know about what they maybe didn't have in the guy who was already there. So I don't know that this is going to be a kicking battle. I think right in the here and now, I think he's probably your starting kicker, and I think you only maybe make that move if you know that you're going to have a legitimate starting role at Michigan as a special teamer. So to me, I think it very sneakily one of their bigger additions of the offseason, because let's just put it out there. Like, this offense, I don't think is going to be as efficient as last year's was. I think they're going to struggle at times to finish drives because of the quarterback position. So, if your drive stalls out at the, 40, the 38-yard line, whatever it is, you pull your kicker out there and you get 3 points out of it. In a lot of games with this defense, that's going to be a win for you, especially in those big games. So I'm a fan of the addition. I think it's, again, like I said, one of the sneakier, more important things that needed to be addressed this offseason, and I'm glad they were able to get their guy.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's a great point on the offense. Last year, James Turner didn't really attempt, one, that many field goals at all, and two, that many long field goals, because it felt like Michigan, was able to really finish drives pretty well, or at least get into the red zone. And obviously they had a good percentage in the red zone. So a good pickup there. Let's talk about departures now. 7 of them last month, kind of during the transfer portal period there, that is now pretty much closed. Guys could enter by the end of the day, but they already would have had to have that paperwork filed a couple days ago. But I'll read them off here. Linebackers Jeremiah Beasley, Samaj Bridgman, and Hayden Moore. Wide receiver Christian Dixon, wide receiver Carmelo English, offensive lineman Amir Herring, and really the biggest loss, I think, of the spring is corner DJ Waller Jr. We talked a little bit about him on Monday, but all things considered, Michigan did a really good job of keeping its roster together. I think the Jeremiah Beasley one was kind of a shock because he's a freshman early enrollee with a bright future. He goes to Missouri. DJ Waller, by the way, he committed, I think, 2 days or 3 days after he entered the portal to Kentucky. So those guys headed down to, it makes you think. Those guys headed down to SEC country. Remember, in this portal period, guys from the SEC can go anywhere but another SEC school and be eligible this fall. You can't go SEC to SEC in April or, now in the weeks following here and be eligible. Other than Texas and Oklahoma this year, just because they technically aren't members of the SEC until August 1st. So those are kind of the ground rules. But all things considered, given that SEC teams can't poach from each other in April, can only poach from schools like Michigan and in Big Ten, ACC, that sort of thing, Michigan did a good job, I think.
Oh, man. I mean, it's just another long line of, the hammer's going to fall on Michigan, or, Michigan's going to get totally raided in the portal. It's something else that just didn't happen. You look at these additions, there's one, and I did something the other day, more so, I opened it outside of the spring window. I looked at guys that have left since January 8th, where the season came to an end. You're standing on that podium as a national champion. Obviously, a coaching change since then. A lot of stuff's happened since then. And you look at the guys, I think there were 14 that left or something like that. And, outside of Darius Clemens at wide receiver, obviously Keon Sabb, that's the biggest one of the offseason in general. Certainly DJ Waller. I mean, I look at DJ Waller as it was going to be Waller or Jair Hill, and now it's just Jair Hill. So, I mean, bringing in some competition there, I think is still something they're looking at. But I just see Jair Hill as cornerback 2 right now, instead of those guys battling it out in fall camp. The linebacker position, you lose 3 guys. Because I choose to see it this way. I see this as Cole Sullivan scared 3 linebackers to the transfer portal because he's in that mix. I mean, I think he's, maybe let's just say he goes into fall camp as linebacker 5 or linebacker 6. I think by the end of fall camp, he could be in that 2 deep. I think he's that good. I think he showed that during the spring games. So, Beasley, that one kind of stinks only because it's an in-state guy. Shocking. Something weird happens with a Belleville kid again. It's just kind of a tradition at this point. You'll wish him the best, but you got to remember too, like Samaj Bridgman, Hayden Moore, those guys committed to a coach that was 4 linebacker coaches ago at this point. So
shout out George.
Shout out to George Hilo. Shout out to Chris Partridge as well, by the way.
And Rick Minter, by the way. We don't want to miss anybody. And Brian Jean-Marie.
Of all these departures, I think the one that is maybe most surprising to me, though, is probably Amir Herring. And my view on that is probably clouded a bit by watching him and Samaj play as seniors in high school at Wayne State. Had talked to them both after the game, and I walked away from the conversation I had with both those guys thinking that Amir Herring, really impressed with him, like could be maybe like a future captain on this team. And I think probably compete for a starting job as early as next year, but wasn't going to happen this year. We'll see where he winds up. That one kind of disappoints me, maybe just because more of that personal tie of covering that game a couple of years ago. But other than that, I mean, all we heard about was someone's going to induce Will Johnson. Someone's going to induce Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Derek Moore could be a flight risk. Like we heard all of these things, and they're all here, and they're all going to be part of the defense that is going to give Michigan a chance to keep this window of contention wide open.
Yeah, and a couple things on the guys that left. One, I think when you have to look at the full context of the linebacker room, and again, Beasley maybe doesn't fit into this because I think that was the shocking one, but Hayden Moore and Samaj Bridgman, neither of them played a single snap last year. They both redshirted but didn't play in any games. And Michigan's at 9 linebackers after those 3 departures. Like that is, still a pretty good number, and actually, maybe even a high number. So they're fine on numbers there. Like maybe they do want to add one as a depth guy. Like I know they were looking at Nakai Hill-Green. He ends up, I believe, at Colorado. So the numbers are fine there. Like you said, 4 linebackers coaches ago. One, the new staff probably doesn't feel the same way about them as George Hilo did, which is fine and natural. And 2, they probably don't feel the same about their position coaches as they did when they came in with the guys that they were recruited by. So I think that's just kind of the way it goes right now in college football. I think that's a big piece of it. And then when you look at some of these guys too, and this includes Amir Herring at offensive line, that 2023 class was kind of weird in that they missed on a lot of their top targets late in the cycle. They had to circle back to guys like Amir Herring, who was predicted to go to Nebraska. Hayden Moore was committed to Scott Frost in Nebraska. Like then they decided to push because they missed on some other guys. I don't think it's a huge surprise that one, it's only a year and a half in, but 1, they haven't made a huge impact, and 2, that they're going elsewhere at this point. So those are the departures. I want to touch on some of the targets real quickly before we move on to our interview with Pete Nakos. But Michigan hosting, unless something has changed as we speak, Kent State defensive tackle CJ West is on campus. A very good player, I think, would be a great ad. Has a lot of high-level suitors. So does Wake Forest corner Deshaun Jones, who Michigan offered on Wednesday. He's visiting Alabama this weekend. He's heard from a bunch of big-time schools since entering the portal a couple days ago, including LSU, Maryland, Georgia, Indiana, Liberty, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. Had 3 interceptions, 2 pass breakups, 37 tackles last year as a Demon Deacon. And then one is we reported on late last night, Grand Valley State, shout out Allendale, Michigan, Division II defensive tackle Javier Suggs, who had a combined 14.5 tackles for loss the last 2 years, is in the portal. He is blowing up in the portal right now. He already visited Arkansas, Wisconsin, Florida State, Kentucky. He is going to see Michigan State this weekend on Sunday, according to Spartan Mag. And then we confirmed with him that he will see Michigan likely after the Michigan State visit. So some targets kind of coming into form here. They've landed a few, obviously, so take some guys off the target list. But pretty clear. I think they want a Cam Good type or better, as a depth guy on the defensive line. I think they know they need a corner as well, maybe a safety. We'll see what they do about linebacker.
Need a couple pieces there. I think offensively, earlier you talked about maybe adding another wide receiver. I think they're good there. I think that they're set there. They've said they're not going to add at quarterback. I don't think they need a running back. I don't think they need offensive line. I think they're set on the offensive side of the ball. I'd be with you, or I'm with them when you just look at what their board looks like right now. Probably need one body somewhere on the defensive line. Certainly probably at tackle, given, Rayshon Benny's coming back from injury. I think, guys like Trey Pierce, maybe still a year or so away from contributing to a rotation. What's that?
And he was hurt too.
Yeah. So some banged up guys there. Adding one more body anywhere on defense, I don't think is the worst thing in the world, only because Now, last year they had a historic amount of depth. They don't have that this time around. I think cornerback, it's clear to me that's now you probably just need to add a body there, similar to like, who's the CJ Charleston or Amorian Walker of the cornerbacks that are in the portal right now. I don't know who that is, but I certainly think you could add one there. Safety, again, I know Brandon Hillman was banged up at the end of the spring as well. Probably just need someone to step up in that area as well as a target. So, yeah, I think this is going to be, I don't think the additions are done. I think that they are going to grab some guys who kind of fortify their depth as opposed to, I don't think you're bringing in your version of Josh Wallace this summer. I think you probably have your other starting cornerback on the roster. It's just a matter of what's there behind him. Now, if you can land one like him, that'd be great. I mean, that's almost hitting the jackpot at this point, but I really do think these next couple of additions that they make will be to round out that depth on the defensive side of the ball.
And by the way, new rule, graduates cannot enter any time anymore. They had to be in by Wednesday. So we could see them trickle in if the schools put them in. They have 48 hours to do that after they filed their paperwork. But the guys in are pretty much the guys in the portal right now. And so there won't be a Josh Wallace entering in June at this point. But these guys know, what they want to do, I guess. You give anyone a deadline, they can make a decision, right? So I think that's kind of where we're at with the transfer.
I want to give credit where credit's due because this is very much an anti-NCAA podcast. It does seem like things have been buttoned up a little more over the last few months in terms of it just not being total chaos all the time in the transfer portal. And I'll just leave it at that.
I agree. Probably one of the reasons is coaches complain like crazy and, they don't want their calendars like so crazy. But I agree. I think deadlines are good for everybody with some of this stuff.